They offloaded her with the clinical, low-yield efficiency of a disposal crew dumping radioactive waste in a poor zip code. She was a diplomatic clusterfrag, wrapped in the high-tensile, light-diffracting silks of a hegemony house that had traded its soul for a seat at the table centuries ago. A daughter scrubbed from the active ledger like a bad debt, pawned off on a backwater human colony as a sweetener for some backroom resource grab. But down in the oil-slicked, heavy-metal claustrophobia of a workshop under Titan's toxic, pressurized sky, one man with knuckles scarred by high-voltage discharge and decades of grit saw the truth. Silas Vane knew that when the universe decides to frag you over, it sometimes hides the gold in the wreckage. The Xandathi cruiser cut through the methane soup like a serrated carbon fiber blade. Silas, a man who lived in the overlap of high-end diagnostics and sledgehammer physics, wiped a streak of industrial-grade lubricant across his brow and watched from the gantry. The bird touched down on Pad 7 with a silent, grave-stabilized arrogance, a jade-colored needle of high-tech precision sinking into the rusted, tetanus-prone meat of Aetherius Prime. Silas had been expecting a shipment of filtration cores and solid-state drives. Instead, the manifest flagged a high-security encryption tag, diplomatic asset, Xylo's oversight. Handle with extreme prejudice. Chancellor Sterling shuffled onto the deck, looking like a man who'd spent his life sucking up to the wrong executives. His face was a pale mask of suppressed panic and sweat. "Vane," he croaked, the word sounding like a dry bearing. "The Xandathi, they've sent a delivery. A royal one. A princess of the bloodline, though I suspect the hegemony considers her more of a manufacturing defect." Silas didn't break his rhythm. His plasma cutter spat a concentrated blue needle of heat at a thermal seam. "We requisitioned hardware, Sterling. Not a political liability with a pulse." "Doesn't matter what we asked for," Sterling countered, his eyes flickering toward the ship like he expected an orbital strike. "Arkanvexos is honoring us. A cultural exchange. In reality, we're the dumping ground for his inconvenient overhead." The workshop's reinforced doors hissed open, venting a cloud of recycled air. The atmosphere in the room spiked, turning sharp and metallic. She was Xandathi, malachite skin, a jawline like a combat knife edge, and hair like liquid graphite. But where the hegemony elites were usually gaunt, high-G-adapted skeletons, she was built with a dense, muscular gravity that suggested she could survive a hull breach without blinking. She was a heavyset anomaly in a culture that fetishized the fragile. In her golden eyes, Silas didn't see royal entitlement. He saw the hard-won cynicism of someone who'd spent her life being treated like a system error. "Princess Kythara, 7th in the Arkan's line," Sterling announced, his voice thin against the hum of the turbines. "She's an indefinite guest. You're her handler, Vane. Keep her out of the light and out of the way." Once the Chancellor had ghosted out of the room, Silas stepped into her personal space. The workshop was quiet, save for the ticking of cooling metal. "I'm Silas," he said, his voice a gravel pit growl. "I keep the life support from flatlining. Sorry they packaged you like a bribe for a mid-level bureaucrat." She looked him up and down, her gaze weighing his threat level with cold precision. When she spoke, the subharmonics in her voice vibrated in his chest. "Save the sentiment, technician. I am the error code my father couldn't delete. On Xandath, if you aren't built like a needle, you're an eyesore. I am the physical proof that his genetic legacy isn't as clean as his propaganda suggests." "Sounds like your people have a hardware issue," Silas said, tightening his grip on his wrench. "Maybe they need a god who can actually lift something instead of just looking pretty on a screen." Kythara's eyes narrowed, the pupils sharpening like aperture blades. A flicker of something that might have been a dark, lethal grin touched her mouth. He dumped her in a converted storage unit, a steel-walled box that smelled of ozone and old freight. It had a rack for a bed and a reinforced viewport looking out at the colony's industrial skeleton, where the refineries were vomiting orange fire into the Titan night. "In the Ethelgard spires," she said, her voice dropping into a lower register, "the rooms are made of smart glass and ivory. My father kept me in the sub-basements with the heavy-lift droids. This cage, Silas Vane, is almost luxury." Silas felt a sharp, familiar spike of protectiveness. "You're on my manifest now. If any of these local lowlifes try to scrape a piece off you, they'll find out I'm built of tougher alloys." She scanned his face, looking for the angle, the hidden debt. Why? You're just a grease monkey with a god complex. You don't know the kill codes I carry. I'm a mechanic, he said, his shadow cutting a long, jagged line across the floor. I've spent 40 years learning the difference between a total system failure and a piece of high-end tech that just needs a different environment to run. That night, Silas hacked the encrypted burst from the Archon's ship. The text burned onto his retina: let the primitives have the waste. Let her rot in the noise. Terminate the connection. Silas felt a slow-burn rage ignite, the kind of heat that usually ended with a body count. 2 days later, the colony mess hall, a brutalist slab of grey concrete and neon flicker, went dead silent when Kythara walked in. Jax Thorne, a colonial enforcer with more muscle grafts than brains, leaned back. He'd been running his mouth all morning, and he was looking for a target to vent his frustration on. Check out the heavy-duty cargo, Thorne projected, his voice bouncing off the metal walls. What's the matter, Greenie? Did the Archon run out of storage space? I heard they had to recalibrate the shuttle's thrusters just to get you off the ground. Here, monkeys, they told us, have our surplus fat. Silas didn't run, he walked, each boot thud a statement of intent. Thorne. Shut your filter before I plug it with your teeth. Getting defensive over the green meat, Vane? You planning on rendering her down for fuel? Before the first punch could throw, Kythara's voice cut the room like a monofilament wire. Your grasp of orbital mechanics is as pathetic as your hairline, Mr. Thorne. My mass is high density, yes. It makes it much harder for insects like you to move me. She walked past him with a heavy, deliberate grace that made the rest of the room look like glitches in the software. She sat down with enough presence to shift the center of gravity in the room. Silas sat across from her, ignoring the static coming from the surrounding tables. You don't need to play the hero, she muttered, her voice low. I've been insulted by experts. You're just an amateur. Name's Silas. And I'm not playing. I just don't like it when the local wildlife gets loud. He poked at the gray sludge on his tray. Tastes like recycled insulation, doesn't it? On Xandath, eating is a design flaw, she said. The elites live on nutrient drips and filtered air. When I was a kid, I'd sneak into the industrial zones and eat real protein with the labor clones. It was my first security breach. Just another way I refused to fit the spec. He sent you here to be a ghost, but you've got too much hardware for that. I have 19 siblings. They're all sleek, fast, and completely hollow. I aced the Spire Systems architecture exams. I can map a jump gate in my sleep. She locked her golden eyes on his. But I was overbuilt. I was excessive. So I became a 0 on the spreadsheet. The message was clear: take our trash, and be grateful for the scrap. Thorne yelled from 3 tables over. Hey, princess. How many credits do we get for your recycling value? The room erupted in a jagged, ugly laugh. Kythara stood up, her movements precise and dangerous, and walked out. The laughter followed her like the smell of a localized fire. Silas didn't rush. He stood up, walked over to Thorne, and put a heavy-duty work glove into the man's throat. As Thorne wheezed on the floor, Silas leaned down. I control the oxygen mix in this sector, Jax. Don't make me decide that you're a carbon dioxide leak we can't afford to fix. He found her in the workshop at 3 o'clock, illuminated by the blue-white arc of a soldering iron. She had his primary diagnostic rig stripped to the chassis, its guts laid out like a forensic autopsy. That's a high-precision heart you're digging into, he said, leaning against the doorframe. Your quantum relay has a microfracture, she said, her fingers moving with a speed that suggested high-speed neural links. Variance is drifting. It's a slow-motion catastrophe. You keep ignoring it, and sections 4 through 9 are going to lose pressure while everyone's sleeping. You'll be the king of a tomb. Silas looked at the terminal, then back at her. You're an architect of the void. I was certified in 17 systems before my father decided I was a PR disaster. In Ethelgard, we learned to manipulate the sun before we're allowed to touch the controls. Her voice was cold, professional. Didn't matter. My mind was top tier, but my body was non-standard. My work was buried under the weight of my own silhouette. Silas pulled up a chair. Show me the fracture. Let's see what else is broken. For the next 5 hours, the rest of the universe was just noise. They talked in the high-level language of code and physics. I topped the class for 3 years, she whispered. They wouldn't give me the laurels. They gave me a special commendation for diligence, the participation trophy of the hegemony. My sister, who can't even calibrate a sensor, got the apex sigil. I got a ticket to the laundry division. Your father's a corporate drone with a crown, Silas said. A man who throws away a high-end processor because the casing is the wrong color is a man who's going to get hacked. Kythara laughed. It was a sharp, genuine sound that cut through the workshop's hum. You're a piece of work, Silas Vane. When they were done, the rig didn't just work, it screamed. Thanks, she said, for looking at the output instead of the chassis. The chassis is fine, Kythara. It's the output I'm interested in. That night, under the pressurized dome of Titan, Kythara felt a surge of adrenaline, the first real spark of life she'd felt in years. 3 weeks went by like a slow-burn fuse. Then the Chancellor showed up, looking like he'd seen his own obituary. Office. Now. The hegemony is calling in the debt. High Legate Malika was waiting, a stick figure in high-end synth silk that probably cost more than the colony's entire annual budget. He looked at the workshop like it was a biological hazard. The atmospheric data from this sector is a joke, he said, his voice a cold, synthesized rasp. 37% variance. This kind of sloppiness is a breach of contract. Maybe we just vent the sector and start over with fresh labor. He looked at Kythara, his lip curling in a micro-expression of disgust. And how's the princess? Found a nice spot in the dirt to call your own? The dirt has more integrity than the spires, Legate. Your father will be amused by your descent into the gutter. Malika's smile was a razor blade. Here's the deal. A cascading systems failure simulation, a logic bomb that would fry a standard AI in an hour. Solve it, and we keep the air on. Fail, and we pull the plug. He threw a schematic onto the wall, a tangled nightmare of interlocking crises. 6 hours. Try not to embarrass your bloodline more than you already have. Silas felt his pulse spike. Legate, that's a kill code. No one untangles that. Then prepare to suffocate. Malika looked at Kythara. Don't choke, princess. It's an undignified way to go. Once he was gone, Dr. Thorne looked at the screen and whispered, it's a rigged game. A death warrant. It's a puzzle, Kythara said, her voice dropping into a combat-ready calm. The gravity in the room seemed to double. It's a dirty, convoluted piece of work, but it's got a logic. Silas, I need your sensors, your high-octane caffeine, and 0 interruptions. I'm not letting this corporate vulture kill my home. Silas looked at her and knew. You got it. I'm your backup. He gave us 6 hours, she said, her fingers already blurring across the interface. We'll be done in 4. Why 4? Her eyes flared gold, a hard, predatory light. Because I want to see his face when he has to wait for me. The next 4 hours were a high-speed hack. Dr. Thorne's team couldn't even follow the logic as Kythara tore through the code like a shark through a bait ball. The trigger is here, Kythara said, highlighting a ghost loop in the coolant. Malika's hiding the payload in the thermal regulation, hoping you'll be too busy fixing the air to notice the core is about to melt. But the readouts are spoofed. He's playing a recording of a normal cycle over a crisis. We have to strip the filters and see the raw data. Silas watched her work, and for the first time, he saw her as a weapon. Why stay? He asked quietly. If we fail, you can probably cut a deal to get out of here. She didn't look up. Where to? Back to being a ghost in a palace? If this colony dies, my only real connection to the universe dies with it. She hesitated. I'm doing this because you didn't look through me. You saw the architect. No one's ever really seen me, Silas. Hard to miss a star, Kythara. Not when everyone's looking for a shadow. At the 4-hour mark, the screens flashed green. The fix was absolute. A piece of coding so elegant it made the Xandathi systems look like ancient clockwork. Done, she said. The room erupted, but she stayed motionless, a mountain of cold, focused victory. Malika returned, already preparing his condolences. "I assume you're ready for the vacuum." "We're ready for the audit," Dr. Thorne said, her voice like steel. She showed him the fix, the sensor strip, the thermal bypass. Malika's face went stiff, his pupils constricting in pure, unadulterated hate. "A lucky guess," he spat. He looked at Kythara. "Did you help the monkeys, Princess, or did you just watch them stumble into the answer?" Kythara kept her voice flat, humble. "I gave them a few pointers on thermal physics, Legate. The humans did the heavy lifting. Any first-year student could have spotted the drift. It wasn't exactly high level." Silas felt the lie, a protective shield she was throwing over the whole sector. "So you were just a cheerleader." "Typical," Malika sneered. He knew she was lying, but he took it because it let him keep his pride intact. "The fix is acceptable. We'll keep the power on for now." He paused. "I expected nothing from you, Kythara. And you delivered." When he left, Silas found her at the viewport. "You let him walk all over you. You saved the colony and let him think you're a footnote. If I took the credit, he'd have to destroy me. He'd see me as a threat to his position. I saved us by staying invisible. It's my tactical advantage, Silas. If they think I'm a joke, they won't see me coming." "No," Silas said, stepping into her space. "You're not invisible to me. You're a fragging nova. I see everything you did, and I'm not letting the universe forget the scale of it." She reached out, her malachite hand touching his. "Thanks," she whispered, "for being the only one with the right optics." 6 weeks passed. They became a unit, 2 ghosts in the machine, their shadows overlapping on the workshop floor. They talked about Earth's history and Xandathi's crimes. They didn't talk about love, that was for people who didn't live on the edge of a vacuum. Then the projector flared, a high-bandwidth purple light that tasted like ozone. High Curator Valerus, the Hegemony's top-tier headhunter, appeared. "Kythara," she said, her voice a precision instrument. "I'm the second voice of the Synapse Command. I've seen the logs from Titan. It was just maintenance, Curator. Cut the frag. Malika's an idiot, but the data doesn't lie. I've seen the singularity logic you used. I've seen the way you bypassed a Hegemony kill code. Valerus's gaze was a targeting laser. You're a high-end asset wasting away in a basement. You're a revolutionary." Silas felt a cold weight settle in his gut. "I'm offering you the chief architect slot," Valerus continued. "Unlimited budget. A star system's worth of hardware. You'd be the one writing the rules, Kythara. You'd be the god in the machine." The offer was a direct hit. The price? The price is simple. Stop pretending you're human scale. Leave this colony and the grease monkey who can't even read your source code. Valerus looked at Silas. "Tell me, Vane, do you love this anomaly?" The question was a physical blow. Kythara went still, a malachite statue. "If you do, you'll let her go. Here, she's a princess in a box. With us, she's the future of the species." "Give me 48 hours, Kythara said, her voice tight. "The window is closing, Princess. Your father is pissed, but I can override him for a mind like yours. The Empire is calling." When the link died, the silence was heavy enough to crush bone. "Silas," she said. "You didn't answer her." "I didn't answer because I was trying to keep my heart from stopping," he said, stepping close enough to feel the heat radiating off her. "I love you. I love the way you tear into hardware and the way you look when you've solved a problem no one else can touch. I love the emerald skin and the gold eyes and the way you make this rusted asshole feel like the center of the galaxy." A single, heavy tear of liquid gold hit the floor. "But she's not wrong," Silas said, his voice breaking. "You're a son. You shouldn't be stuck in a basement with a guy who can only offer you bad coffee and a life of maintenance. You should go. Be the queen they were too scared to let you be." "Silas, shut up. You could rewrite the stars." "Silas, shut the frag up." She grabbed his hands, her grip enough to bruise. "Do you know what I was before this? A ghost. A rounding error. I was brilliant in a room where no one looked at me. Then you sat with me. You looked at me like I was the only thing that mattered. Because you were. The command offers me a throne. You offer me a life. You offer me a place where I'm not an outlier or an asset, but a person. I'd rather be standard in your arms than a god in a cold glass tower. Silas pulled her in, his face buried in her neck. They're going to call you a fool, he whispered. Then I'm the best equipped fool in the system. She looked at him, her face glowing. Let's send the curator our response. What is it? That the revolution already happened. In a workshop on Titan. The dawn came, amber and toxic. They were sharing a cup of sludge when the final shadow dropped. Archon Vexos, the man himself, appeared on the screen. Kythara. Father. I heard you said no. I've seen the logic. He was a man made of cold calculations and centuries of ego. I made a mistake. I'm offering you restoration. A palace in the heights. Your mind will be the pride of the hegemony. We will overlook the physical deviations in favor of your utility. Overlook, she spat. We are pragmatists, daughter. When the asset is this valuable, we adjust the parameters. You sent me here to die, she said, her voice rising like a storm. You wanted me erased. But in the dark, I found someone who saw my light. He didn't overlook me, father. He celebrated me. He loved me for the hardware, not despite it. The Archon looked at Silas like he was a bug on a windshield. This primitive? This oil-slicked ape? This man, Kythara said, is worth more than your entire glass empire. Vexos's face turned into a mask of pure, concentrated malice. Then rot in your mud. Stay until this creature dies, as they always do. Their lives are a flicker. You'll give up centuries of power for a few decades of squalor. You'll be alone in a graveyard before your life has even started. Kythara didn't blink. Then I'll have had decades of being real, which is more than you've had in 300 years of being a simulation. Frag off, father. The screen went black. Kythara leaned into Silas, the weight of the universe finally settling. I burned the bridge, she whispered. You okay? No, she said, looking up with gold eyes. I'm better. They stood together as the amber sun hit the horizon. Outside, the colony breathed, a massive, leaking machine kept running by a love that didn't fit the hegemony specs. Silas would age and die, and she would remain, a jade mountain of memory. But for those decades, the coffee was hot, the workshop was theirs, and the silence was perfect. In a galaxy of ghosts and glass, they had found the only thing that was real. In the end, the weight you choose to carry is the only thing that keeps you grounded. And sometimes, the most revolutionary thing you can do is just be seen.